Good morning, folks. Welcome to another of our daily devotionals at the beginning of another week. I want us to move on to Psalm 36 this morning, and we're going to focus solely on verse 1. Now, verse 1 is actually quite difficult to translate into English from the original Hebrew. And if you look at various English translations of the Bible, you'll see that to be the case. The best two translations that I would suggest are that which is found in the ESV, where verse 1 reads, "Transgression speaks to the wicked deep in his heart. There is no fear of God before his eyes." But another translation that I came across in one of the commentaries that I was using translates verse 1 as follows: "A divine oracle about transgression has been heard in my heart with reference to the wicked. There is no dread of God before his eyes." And it's this second translation that I want to take and expound or explain. What does it mean? Well, what it means is this: the psalmist is saying that deep down in his heart, he has been granted insight into what is really going on inside the wicked, how they really think. He knows what one of the main problems is and what is at the root of people who sin. And he's saying he didn't gain this insight by his own reasoning. He didn't gain this insight by his own human intuition. Rather, he received it as a divine oracle, a divine revelation from God. It was God who showed David what lay behind the sinning of people. And what was it? It was that there was no dread of God before their eyes. That is at the very core of wickedness. Most translations have "there is no fear of God before his eyes." And that is a legitimate translation, but in this context, the word fear is better translated dread. In other words, people who sin and who live lives of wickedness have no sense whatsoever of dread in relation to God. That dread of God which might otherwise restrain them sinning is missing. And it's missing either because they don't believe in the existence of God, or it's missing because they do not believe that they will one day be held accountable before God for the sins they commit, for the way they live their lives. We'll see more of that in a future study. And folks, here we see what lies at the heart of most of the sinful behaviour that is so evident in our society today, and indeed that is so prevalent in the world in general. Increasingly, people do not have a healthy dread of God. They do not fear God. Years ago, certainly when I was young, there was a much more widespread fear of God among people. People not only believed in the existence of God, they also believed that God punished sins, and that it was a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. It was an awful thing to have God against you. That widespread belief, that general prevailing fear or dread of God served as a significant restraint on sinful behaviour. Sadly today, that dread, that fear is missing. We have to ask the question, why is that the case? Well, obviously there are various reasons. One is certainly that people today do not attend church in the same way that they did years ago. And that being the case, they have never really been taught about God, about right and wrong, about sin, about punishment, and so on. In previous generations, most people went to church and knew these things. Nowadays, most people don't. And so there's no fear of God before most people. As well as that, even those who do go to church, they're not necessarily hearing what they should be hearing. The message in some churches has changed. You do not hear about sin, the wrath of God, punishment, hell. The message is about love and being good and helping each other. On top of that, you have the growth of atheism, which of course has been helped by the godless worldview of evolution. It's amazing the number of people in Britain today who classify themselves as non-religious or as atheists. Such people have no dread of God. If there's no God, there's no punishment. There's no afterlife. You can live whatever way you want. We, as God's people, need to pray that God would restore a healthy and restraining fear of God among our people. We as Christians need to communicate the law of God to people and to show them what sin is and to show them the consequences of sin. Because where there is no dread of God, you can be sure their wickedness will thrive. May God help us reflect on these things today. Amen.